What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to build your own very LinkedIn outreach system in n8n. This video is ideal for anybody who wants to automate their LinkedIn outreach with a system that creates a targeted lead list using just natural language. It then enriches those leads with a detailed profile. It pulls the data on those profiles using AI, and then it generates a personalized message to send a connection request. All right, so it can send connection requests, sends follow up safely, and then tracks the entire campaign through a Google Sheet. And you'll be able to use that for whatever your reasons or your goals are, whether it's bringing in clients, new leads, reaching out to employers, job seekers, whatever your goal is. You'll be able to use this system to accomplish whatever outreach tasks you're looking to accomplish. All right, I'm Geno. I've built multiple businesses using automation, and I hope others do the same. So stay tuned for this video, and I'm going to walk you through the entire build structure. And to be very clear, I haven't built this yet. All right, so we're going to be building this together, and I like to do these videos like this a lot of times so that you can see exactly what really goes into building a structure like this. A lot of times you might come across videos where they explain what they've already built. I like to really do things from the ground up so you can see exactly what goes into building these workflows from start to finish and what the behind the scenes is really like, so that there's no guessing games and you know what you're getting into when you go out and actually start building these for yourself, because they're very valuable, but you also have to understand what you're getting into so that you know what changes to make and you don't get overly frustrated throughout the process, because sometimes that happens. All right, so without saying too much, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so we can see here that the actor ran successfully. It completed the search. It pulled 1,090 items. All right, so, and if we execute with no limit, then we'll be able to pull all of the leads here like we had before. All right, so now we have that information. You can see we have our 1,090 items again, and we'll be able to append that to our Google Sheet. All right, now we'll go ahead and execute this step here. Make sure everything is good. All right, we see that the node was executed successfully. 10 items were created. We can see the messages here, so it'll get 10, create 10 messages, go back and create another 10, so on and so forth. So it'll loop all the way through until all of these are completed. Okay, so now the node was executed successfully. So we're going to run this. Okay, so this node was executed successfully. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so you can see this is based on the previous container ID. And now with this one here, we'll go ahead and execute this one as well. And let's see what we get with this. Okay, so all of these nodes were executed successfully. And if we go to our spreadsheet, it's updated right here. Obviously, we don't want to send all of those at the same time. So we could add something in here called a wait node, to where basically it will wait 1 day before sending out the next batch of invitations. After you pass that limit, it makes it difficult, or it can ban your account, right? So rather than allowing that to happen, it's a good idea to set this up to where you only send maybe 20 items at a time, right? You can set your limit node, for example, 20 times, but it'll only do it once per day, right? So it'll go through 20 times a day, and then it'll wait for another day before it sends the next 20, right? So basically, if you have that set up, you'll be able to run it, and it'll run automatically however you want to do it with no issue. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to be very clear on what the step-by-step build plan is. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is scrape leads through Apollo using Apify, which is a platform that basically allows you to download different actors and different AI tools that are created by other individuals, and you can combine that with n8n to be able to accomplish different tasks online. So we'll use Apify and Apollo to do that. The second step is to clean and verify the leads using personalization. All right, and then thirdly, what we're going to do is we're going to set up Phantom Buster, which is another tool to send LinkedIn DMs. All right, so it's a pretty straightforward process, simple, not necessarily easy, but with that said, we're going to try to be as efficient as possible as we build this out, and everything is going to be very clear cut and obvious on what the steps are. No fluff, everything is going to be pretty straightforward and raw with regards to what goes into this process. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with these 3 steps here and start building out this AI LinkedIn DM system. All right, so before we get started, the first thing we want to do is we want to verify that the tools that we plan to use are actually available. All right, because this will make sure that we at least have, a high level sort of walkthrough to make sure that we're using the right tools and we're not wasting our time. And then we build something out all the way, and then we find out that we have to go back and change something, at the beginning of the process, which obviously can be a waste of time. So first, we're just going to go to Apify.com here, and I'm going to make sure that we still have access to the Apollo scraper that we plan to use. All right, so we're just going to go here. I'm going to go to the Apify store, and I'm just going to type in Apollo. Okay, so it looks like here we have a few different potential options. Now, another thing we want to consider here is the cost as well, because the way Apify works is people from all over the world create different tools and scrapers, and basically, you know, they can set whatever cost they want to set to them. So we want to make sure that, you know, obviously we pick the most reasonable option. Like this one here is $29.99 a month. We won't use this one. So another thing is Apollo has been difficult to find scrapers on Apify that work with Apollo, because basically Apollo is a scraper, right? So what Apollo does is the same thing that we're doing for ourselves. So from a company standpoint, what they're trying to do, it seems like anyway, is eliminate potential competition by making it difficult or impossible to use the Apollo scraper. So if we don't use Apollo, we will find another solution. It's just a matter of what the best solution is. So just give me a little bit of time to figure this out, and I'll check right back in with y'all. All right, y'all, so we came across this lead scraper here. So it says it's just like Apollo. It's not Apollo, but it's basically an alternative to Apollo, and it might even actually be better than Apollo. So you're supposed to have leads that are fresh and verified and basically have the same leads as Apollo and Zoom Info and Lucia, so which are also all other lead finder tools and web scrapers. So we're going to give this a try here. So basically what we want to do, so it says, first we're going to read through these instructions here. Okay, so we can apply the filters directly here. All right, so we'll choose the number of results we want. Because this is just a demo, we'll just go with 1,000 for now to start off. And we don't really, so we can filter by person's name, job title, employee size, location, person's location, industry, keywords, revenue and funding, business model, company location, website, email status, which is probably verified or unverified. Yeah, so we want this to be verified. We can include the emails here. And because another reason we want to include the emails, well, a couple of different reasons. Number one, we can always send out a cold email campaign to anyone who we don't connect with on LinkedIn right away. But what we can also do is bypass the LinkedIn connection limits by pulling the emails from open profiles and sending them connections directly as well. So for those of you who might not know, LinkedIn limits the number of people who you connect with within a week or within a day or whatever it is. So basically, if you send a connection request, you can only send up to about, I think it's 20 per day or 100 per week or something like that. However, if you have their email address, you can send out a significantly larger amount of connection requests, right? So what we want to do is find people's email addresses who do display them on LinkedIn, and we can connect with more people that way as well by just entering their email address. So this is another reason we want to have the email on. Person's name, we're not going to filter by that. Job title, we'll choose, let's say, so we'll filter for these three here. Seniority, so we'll also choose this here, founder, CEO, and yeah, that'll be good for now. Departments and function, we'll leave that blank. Employee size, so for what we're trying to do right now, we'll do 0 to 1 and 2 to 10 for employee size. Obviously, you can filter for more companies than this, but right now I'm looking for solo founders or people who might have a couple of virtual assistants or, you know, small teams, because that's what we want to reach out to. So that's my target there. But whatever your target is, obviously you can change that. The person's location, we want them to be in the United States. Industry, keywords. So we'll leave this blank for now. We'll leave that blank also. Business model. Let's go services to start off, right? Because really what we're trying to do is we're trying to automate. We're trying to help people who might be handling the entire business or process themselves or all of the processes themselves. And we want to help them automate those processes by reaching out to them and letting them know that we can implement different AI workflows for them. So we'll pick services first because this is a common business model that has those issues there. product too, but we'll just start with services for now, because why not? Company location, we also want this to be in the United States. We'll leave company website blank, and let's see what the run options are here. So okay, yeah, we can leave this as is as well. So we'll click save. All right, and I'll tell you what, first what we're going to do, we're just going to put in 50. Let's say it should be at least 1,000. Okay, well, we'll leave it at 1,000, because I at least want to just test this out first and make sure this works the way that we plan for it to work, because again, we don't want to build out everything and then realize later on that it doesn't do what we need it to do. So we'll go ahead and run this one time. So if we click the log here, we can see that it's trying to run. Okay, so it says it could take about 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, that's a long time for a demo. All right, so we're just going to let it run, but we're going to, we just want to collect a few leads first to make sure that it's working correctly, and then we'll pause it, because we don't need to wait 15 to 20 minutes to test it. Now let's see what we have here. Okay, so this looks like it's working correctly. It's what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and abort this for now, and we're just going to evaluate these leads quickly and see what we have. All right, so I'm just going to click on some profiles here that we got in our search results and see what it looks like. Okay, founder, game inventor. Okay, yep, looks like the type of people who we want to reach out to, founders. All right, so this looks like this is their company. Let's just see how many employees. 2 to 10 employees. Yep. So yeah, it's pretty accurate in the United States. Okay, so this is what we want. All right, let's just click one more just to check one more time. Social media communications and operations leader. Okay, let's see what we have here. Okay, so she's also a founder. All right, 2 to 10 employees. Okay, yeah, so this looks like it's working. So what we need it to be, advertising services, so definitely service-based business. Yeah, this is what we want. All right, so it seems to be working pretty well. All right, so the scraper looks like it's doing what we want it to do. All right, so we'll use this for now. And if you look at the information that we're getting here, we get all of this good data, right? So we get the person's name, email address, their position at the company, founder and CEO, their LinkedIn URL, city, state, country, all of this stuff, right? So if we keep scrolling, I'm not going to go through every single column, but you can see here the information that we get here. It's definitely a lot of valuable info, especially with what we're trying to accomplish. All right, now we're going to go ahead and continue running this, right? And we're going to collect the rest of the data. All right, so the way we're going to do that, we're just going to go ahead and click rerun. Or actually, I think we can click resurrect. Let me see. I think resurrect will continue. Rerun from start, resurrect. All right, yeah, we'll just resurrect because we already collected a few leads. There's no point in collecting them over again. And we'll just wait for this to finish. And in the meantime, what we're going to do is let that run. And because I've set up a few different workflows already, I already have a plan on where we want to put the leads, right? So right now we're just running it manually, right? But we're going to, once that list finishes, we're going to import that lead list to a Google spreadsheet. All right, so basically we'll have all of the leads here, and what we're going to do is we're going to plug this in to our workflow in n8n so that we'll be able to pull them directly from that spreadsheet. All right, so we'll just wait for this actor to finish running here before we pull all of that information, and then we'll proceed. All right, so I went ahead and aborted this run again. All right, so you can see here we have 341 leads. Obviously we had put in 1,000, but we don't need all 1,000 right now, and it was taking some time here. You can see it took 5 minutes and 35 seconds just to pull 341 leads. So just for the sake of time, we went ahead and paused that. But what we're going to do is we're going to pull all of these leads and move them to the Google Sheet. All right, so if we scroll all the way to the bottom here, you can see the number of pages we have. Okay, so this is 7 pages of leads. And yeah, we'll just pull the rest of the leads later. But if we go to the top right here, we click export, then we'll be able to download this. I'm going to download it as a CSV, and we're just going to keep all of the fields there for now. Click download. We'll import this here, and we'll click append to current sheet. All right, so I'll just click import. All right, and now you can see here, we can delete this row because it doesn't need to be there. All of our information is here. I'm just going to bold this line and I'm going to freeze this row so that the columns are a little bit more organized. We'll cover this up so everyone's emails aren't exposed. And you can see here, all of the leads that we collected from the scraper are now on the list. If we scroll all the way to the bottom, all right, 341 leads are on this list. All right, so that's what we want. So that's how we collect our leads. All right, so now that we have these set up here, let's go back to our build plan for a second. All right, so we've completed step one here, which is to scrape Apollo leads using Amplify. We've cleaned and verified the leads and used personalization, so that's completed. Now the third step is to set up Phantom Buster to send LinkedIn DMs. All right, now if you haven't noticed yet, this is why it's very, very important to make sure that you can execute all of these steps manually before just going out and setting up the entire system and then finding out later that something doesn't work correctly or you have to go back and change something. It can be very, very frustrating and a waste of time. So the reality is that there are going to be steps along the process where you're going to have to debug things or fix different errors. That's what comes with the territory. That's what comes with setting up AI workflows like this. So just understand that there's no such thing as, becoming really good at this or an expert at this and then just never having to go back and troubleshoot things. All right. So that's why you always want to go through manually, make sure things work, and make sure that you're doing things in the correct format, and then you can go back to n8n and set that up. All right, so the last thing we want to test manually is Phantom Buster, which is the tool that we're going to use to send out our messages. All right, so what Phantom Buster is Phantom Buster allows us to attach different add-ons based on the platform that we're trying to use and whatever our goal is, and we can accomplish different automated tasks. All right, so basically you can see here there's a bunch of different features that we can use here, but the one that we're really looking to use is something that will allow us to send messages and attach an icebreaker. All right, so first what we're going to do is, I don't even know if I still have a Phantom Buster account. Let me try to start a free trial, and if it doesn't let me, then that means I probably already have an account, but let's see. Okay, yeah, I already have an account here. I haven't used this in a while, so let's just see what if we can log in here. All right, so yeah, we're logged in. All right, now the next thing we want to do is find add-on that we want to use for the test that we're trying to accomplish. So let's go to LinkedIn and let's see what we can access here. Let's see if they have. All right, so we're just going to scroll with LinkedIn Auto Connect. What's this? Auto Connect with a list of LinkedIn users messaging invitations with personalized message. All right, yeah, so this one looks like it could be the right one. Sometimes you might just need to go through and literally just test a few or multiple potential add-ons, or they call them phantoms, right? So just test different phantoms and see which ones or which one is right for the goal that you're trying to accomplish. But I think this should do the trick for what we're trying to do here. All right, so basically what we're going to need to do is connect our profile URLs. So we can add a spreadsheet URL, we can add an actual URL. We're just going to go ahead and add a spreadsheet URL because we already have that here. All right, so we also are going to go ahead and make this URL public. Let's go back to Phantom Buster and paste that here. Spreadsheet settings are fine. We don't need to do anything with this here. Let's click save, click through there. And basically what this is going to allow us to do is connect our LinkedIn account to this Phantom, and we're going to be able to pull the leads off of this spreadsheet. All right, but one thing I want to do actually before we set this up once again is to test this. All right, so what I'm actually going to do, what we're actually going to do is take just the first two out of this sheet, add a second sheet just like that. All right, and we're going to go off of that sheet instead of this one. All right, so actually what I'm going to go ahead and do is, tell you what, I'm going to make a copy of this just because I want to make sure that we don't lose these leads, but I also want to only test one to start off. All right, so we're going to delete this and we're just going to go based off of this one here. So let me do this step one more time here to make sure that it reads this correctly. Click save. All right, and now we should be fine. So now the reason that we did that is because what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go back to this lead list. I'm going to scroll all the way past the last column here, and I'm going to put a column that says icebreaker right here. All right, now something to point out. If I click save here, this does allow us to do things like this, right? Like you can see here, I can type in hey, and I can, you know, if I want to put in the person's first name directly here in Phantom Buster, I can do that, right? Hey, first name, you know, whatever it is, you can basically see these down here of what we can add, different things we can add or automatically fill in, right? But we already have that in the spreadsheet. All right, so we don't need to do this. We already have the message that we want to send. So we'll say scrape all available profile data, but we'll go back here. We're going to create it. We created this column here called icebreaker. All right, so now we'll go back to our build plan here, and we've completed this first step here. All right, so we'll just put an asterisk next to this to let us know that that's completed. The next thing we need to do is clean and verify the leads. All right, so what I mean by using personalization is basically on LinkedIn, when you send out a connection request, you have the option of adding a note to your connection request. All right, so for example, if I go to my LinkedIn profile here, and we look at some people who've connected, so you can see here, you know, Marissa, she added a note to her LinkedIn request to me, right? And basically we can do the same thing. Quick disclaimer, a lot of times I also you can very much just send out the connection request without having a note. A lot of times you might actually even get better response rates with that, but at the end of the day, at least for me, what really matters is the conversion rates, right? More than anything, right? So what I like to do a lot of times, I like to split test, right? So I might test half of my request with a note and half of them without a note and just see what responses I get. So a lot of times, to be frank, I'll just send out the connection request without a note, and that works just as fine. So, but I still want to show you how to set this up so that you understand how to do it. All right. So basically, all we really need to do here is we can use ChatGPT or any AI platform that you want to use. All right, and we'll basically just let it know what we're trying to do here. So we'll say, all right, so we'll start with something like this first. Okay, so it's saying to create hyper-personalized LinkedIn connection notes. I need to see the lead list so I can tailor it. Upload your lead list. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and upload it so that it has that. All right, so we'll click the plus sign here, and we'll go to the data set that we downloaded, and we'll just send that in and see what it does from here. Okay, so it's saying we need to re-upload it as a CSV or Excel file. Okay, so we'll go back here, download as a CSV. Let's go back here and do the same thing. Okay, you know what we're going to do? So we're going to add a little bit extra to this prompt here. It might be a little complicated to some people, but this is just going to allow me to automate it a bit easier later. All right, so we're just going to give a bit more information. We're going to say return results in this format. All right, so we'll say something like this. It's pretty basic. Another thing to note that there is a character limit on the messages that you send. I think you can send notes with up to 300 characters in the note. So just keep it in mind. You don't want this to be too long. All right, so we'll just say something like this. And here we'll just add the LinkedIn or the fields that we wanted to really focus on as well. All right, now we'll see what this can get us. Okay, got to follow your request structure. Here are 5 examples. Okay, so this looks pretty good. This looks pretty good. So you see this one here. It says, hey, Stefan, love what you're doing with the CLU Studio and its experiential design projects. I'm also into creative tech and brand storytelling. Let's connect. All right, yeah, so this is something that looks pretty decent. And just so this is a good opportunity to let you know why I'm doing it like this. So normally what I'll do when I build our workflows, and this is a benefit of us doing this live, is usually I'll go through it at least one time manually to make sure everything is working correctly. But what this was going to allow me to do is basically copy and paste this JSON structure into n8n directly. And of course I can just go to n8n and do it that way, but we're already here. So, and I also want you to be able to see how all this works. So that way we'll be able to easily move the JSON structure to n8n so I can make sure it's the type of format that I want and to make sure that it's working correctly. And we already had AI created for us, right? So what we're going to do is we can just copy and paste this directly into the icebreaker column here. and I'm just going to wrap this text. All right, and basically this will be able to automatically plug into Phantom Buster, and Phantom Buster will send these automatically for us. All right, so that's all we got to do there. All right, so we'll click save, make sure everything looks good first, and then click save. We don't need an email discovery service for this, I don't think, right? So click next. Invitations to send per launch. It says 10, right? But let's keep it at 1 for right now, just because it's the only number of profiles we want to send anyway. Okay, yeah, so all of that's fine. Let's look at what we got here. Keep account safe. Only when it runs manually. And okay, and we'll click save here. All right, and now what we can do is just click launch. So just wait for this to finish and make sure that this works. So again, we're testing this manually. We like to do this with each step before we go into n8n and build out the entire workflow. Once we confirm that this works the way that we want it to work, then we can go back to n8n and move everything there with no issue. All right, so it looks like, so it says authentication was successful, but it says there was an error with the input. All right, so let's see what we got going on here. All right, so we figured out what the issue is. I troubleshooted this for a quick second, and what we had to do is go back to our spreadsheet URL, and the spreadsheet settings here, we have to let Phantom Buster know which column it is that contains the profile URLs. All right, so we have to select this column here, LinkedIn URL. Then on top of that, we also have to click the names of the columns to keep in the result file. All right, so basically any information that we might want it to pull or incorporate into the message, we can select that here. And what we want to select is icebreaker. All right, so we want to scroll all the way to the bottom and select icebreaker, because basically this information we're going to plug into the message before it sends. All right, so first name, last name. We could keep all of these if we hadn't already pre-created our icebreaker message through ChatGPT. But because we already have that, we don't necessarily need to click these or keep these, right? So that's basically what we need to do to set that up. So we're going to try this one more time and click save, and this should work now, but let's test it and make sure. All right, so click that there. Then here we want to click add and find icebreaker here. All right, so we're going to add in our icebreaker right there as the message. Click save. Don't need an email discovery service. They're just trying to upsell us on stuff there, so we'll skip through that. We'll keep the maximum at 1. Obviously it can be more than that, but that's fine. And we'll click save, and we'll try this again. Let's see if this works as well. All right, so we're going to click launch one more time. Now again, it's simulating real-time connection, so it's basically trying to wait every minute or so before it sends out. It waits about a minute or so before it sends out a connection request. So all right, so this time it worked. It says one invitation has been sent, and that's what we want. All right, so you can see here the results. This one finally sent. It was successful. And all right, and that is the third step that we needed to manually test before we built this out in n8n. All right, so we scrape the leads, we personalize the leads, and we set up Phantom Buster to send the LinkedIn DMs or connection requests. All right, so now what we could do is go to n8n and set up our workflow there. All right, so now we'll go ahead and build this out in n8n. All right, now the first step we're going to add here is our Appify node. All right, so we'll set that up here. Make sure you have your Appify account connected through the API key. And basically what we'll do is click our drop-down list here and select our actor that we're using to extract the leads. All right, so we can plug that in here, and this will allow us to basically run the search query that we set up on Appify. And then from there, it will pull the leads and automatically input the leads into the system. All right, now before we proceed, let's go back to our build plan here. We've tested all of these manually, and we just want to make sure that we're clear on how we're actually going to build this out, right? So the first step we need to make sure of is we want to scrape leads. All right, so we're not using Apollo, so we'll just call it scrape leads using Appify, right? Then after we scrape the leads using Appify, we need to then append those leads to a spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet. After it's added to the Google spreadsheet, we're going to need to add an icebreaker column for the icebreaker to be input into the spreadsheet. And then after that icebreaker column is added, we'll then add the Phantom Buster agent to be able to process that spreadsheet and send out the DMs to the people on that specific list. All right, so that is how we'll need to set this up. All right, so let's just think through this here for a second. So we have this here to pull the leads. Okay, so that's done. Then after we add that, let's see. So let's go Google Sheets, and we'll say append or update row and sheet. And we'll select our spreadsheet that we want to use here. So use this one, or actually we'll use this one because this one already has all the other leads on it. And then we'll say from sheet 1. All right, boom. No columns found. Okay, yeah, we have to go back and update these columns. Yeah, because we just copy and pasted that, that's why. So we'll just copy this here and paste this back in here as well. All right, now let's go back to n8n and click retry. It should be fine. Yeah, there we go. All right, now it's working. Column to match on. We'll select LinkedIn URL for this one. And we really don't need anything off of here. I'll keep this information as is, like this. But we probably won't need anything more than just the icebreaker and the LinkedIn URL, possibly the name, information, and email too. But we're going to keep this here just in case we want to use this information later. All right, so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and go back to our Amplify trigger here and make sure everything is set up. And let's execute this step and just test and make sure that this is working. So let's go to Amplify and create an event. All right, so we can go back to our Amplify account, go back to our actor, open this up here, and go back to our run so we can pick up where we left off last time, right? Because we already have 341 leads here. So there's no point in running it again and then having to pay more unnecessarily. So what we'll do, click the actions drop down, click resurrect, and we'll resurrect. And we still won't run this the entire time. But what I want to do is make sure that this workflow is working correctly. We already tested it manually. Now we need to make sure that it's working the way that we want it to work in n8n. All right, so let's just give this a few seconds here. It's at 342 right now. Let's just give it a little bit of time to pull some more leads to make sure that there's no issue, and then we'll abort. All right, so we can go ahead and abort for right now. Again, for the sake of time, I'm going to run this later when I actually am going to pull leads, but I just want to make sure this is working now. All right, so let's go back to our spreadsheet. We see we have 382 leads here, and these leads should be updated now on our spreadsheet here. So let's make sure that it actually is. So let's, okay, so it's not. So let's refresh this and see. Oh, you know what? The reason it's not updated yet is because we need to execute the entire workflow, and we didn't do that yet. That's why. Yeah, it hasn't run yet. Yeah, that's obvious, right? So now we're going to go ahead and append this to our sheet. Okay, so let's open this up and double check that this is set up correctly. And let's make sure this is working here. So execute step. Let's see what we get with this one. Saying we need to create a trigger event. Oh, so maybe it's requiring us to create an entirely new event instead of being able to run or to resurrect an event. Let me double check here. Maybe we can change the event type. Succeeded, because yeah, basically we're not running the entire run, like we're resurrecting it instead of running it from the beginning. And I think that might be throwing it off. Okay, so let's try this one more time. Let's go to actions, resurrect. Let's run it again here. Or actually, hold on. We're going to abort this again. And we're going to execute this workflow first. All right. And now it says waiting for you to create an event and amplify. All right, now we'll go back here and let's try resurrecting this and see if it works. If this doesn't work, then we'll just go ahead and run one from the beginning, but this should work. It's not really a big deal, but I'm pretty sure this should work here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to need to do is enter our values for each of these columns so that it knows where to pull the information from. So what we're going to do here. All right. So all I did here was I took the exact names from each column here on the spreadsheet. All right. And I added them in here in brackets. Okay. So now it knows how to map each column. So we're going to try this again. Execute this step. Normally what we'll be able to do, this column to match on perimeter is required. Okay, so we have to go back up here and select our column to match. All right, so LinkedIn URL. There we go. All right, now we're going to try this one. Normally what we'll be able to do is just drag it from the left-hand side here to the correct value, but we're not doing that because it's not showing up here for some reason, so we have to figure out what's going on. Okay, so all right, so this is running here, as we can see. All right, so while this is running, we'll go ahead and set up our next step in our workflow, which is our Google Sheet. All right, so we'll add our node for Google Sheets, click append or update row and sheet, and for our lists, we'll go ahead and choose the original list that we had there. For the sheet, this is the only sheet we have on there right now, which is why it says sheet 2. Obviously, normally it would say sheet 1, but if you recall, we deleted sheet 1, so it's called sheet 2. All right, so just to be clear so that there's no confusion as you're watching this. All right, columns to match. So we'll click the LinkedIn URL, and when this previous node finishes, we'll be able to drag and drop the correct values into this sheet, and we'll go from there. So we'll just give this some time to finish running, and then we'll proceed after this is done. Okay, so we can see here that the actor ran successfully. It completed the search. It pulled 1,090 items. All right, so we can see all of the results that we got here on the right hand side. All right, now the next thing we want to go ahead and do is open our Google Sheets node, and we want to match each column with the correct input that we have here on the left hand side. All right, so we're going to drag LinkedIn right there. Full name goes here. First name goes here. Last name will go here. All right, so basically we're just going to drag all of these through exactly as it is here on the left hand side. So email matches with email. And if there are any columns that you don't feel like dragging here, then you can just remove them, right, by just clicking the little trash bin icon right there. Right, so for example, like, you know, specialties, description, we'll keep description, but we don't really need specialties there. Founded year, we don't really need that, you know, stuff like that. I'm going to go ahead and keep them all just in case I want to use it for my own personal reasons later, but, you know, right now, we'll just go with what we have. All right, so I'm going to drag all of these here, country. Now, if you notice one thing, we don't have anything to plug in here for icebreaker, right? So, and that reason is because we're not pulling that information from the input that the actor found. This information is actually here from the, you know, we added this onto the spreadsheet ourselves. All right, so we're going to leave this here. We'll leave this blank for now. We'll come back and take care of that later. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and execute this step and let this. All right, y'all. So complete honesty, something happened with my laptop to where my laptop rebooted on its own. All right, but that's not an issue because, so basically, number one, we only had a few nodes that we had already added here, so it didn't take long to bring this back up here. But this is an opportunity to show you all something that could be valuable as well. So do you remember how before when we built out this Appify node, the operation that we chose was run an actor and get data set, right? If you want to pull a previous run, you change this operation to get last run. And what this will allow you to do is select the last run or the most recent run of the actor that you're trying to pull. You can also choose the status of the actor as well. So let's say, so for this node, for example, or for this Amplify actor, it says that you need to pull at least 1,000 results for the node to run, otherwise, or for the actor to run, otherwise it's not going to run, or it's not going to allow you to run the actor if you have it set for anything less than that. If you want to, for example, only pull 100 or a couple hundred or however many that's less than 1,000, a way to do that is to run the actor in Amplify. Then you can abort the actor whenever you get the amount that you want. And then you can go to get last run, right? And you can change the status to aborted or whatever status you want to set it to. We'll keep this as succeeded right now just because this is, you know, we ran the entire flow through last time. But if you ever want to pull a recent run for any reason, just change it to get last run. Like I said, my laptop shut down on me. You know, it had some updates that forced the shutdown. So this is a good opportunity for you to really know that this is also something that could be valuable to you. All right, so we'll choose get last run. Status we'll keep as succeeded, and we'll just execute this step here. And you can see here that the node was executed successfully. Now, if we go here, however, you'll see that we don't have the information here that we had before with the leads, right? Like the different columns that we had. So we had, you know, name, email, all of those things where we can just drag and drop that information from this left-hand column. However, what we'll need to do now is we'll just need to add a get dataset node from this Amplify node here. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We click that there, and for the dataset ID, we're going to look on the left hand side here, and we're going to scroll down and find the dataset ID. So this default dataset ID right here is what we're going to drag here. All right, now we have our ID. All right, so from here, what we can do is execute this step here, and this will pull all of our information. All right, so now we have the information that we had before as the output, right? First name, last name, all of these things here. All right, now something to point out here, we set the limit to 50, just, you know, to be aware of that. So we want to eliminate that limit there, and if we execute with no limit, then we'll be able to pull all of the leads here like we had before. All right, so now we have that information. You can see we have our 1090 items again, and we'll be able to append that to our Google Sheet. All right, so we'll do the same thing as we did before. Select our document, select our sheet, and we'll map our columns. So the column to match on will match with LinkedIn URL, and we'll just drag and drop our information from here. All right, so full name goes there, first name here, country. All right, we can delete the source, and we'll add the icebreaker here in a little bit. All right, now we'll go ahead and execute this step here. Make sure everything is good. All right, so we see our node was executed successfully here. All right, so those are two different ways that you can pull the dataset items from that list. All right, now that this is done, the next step is to go ahead and add the OpenAI messaging model so that we can generate the personalized message. Now, something to point out before we set this up, we'll set this up in a second. We want to add a node in between here, because if you look at this, right, we have 1,090 items here. If we ran this directly through the messaging model node right here, it would basically try to send all 1,090 items at once, which we don't want to do because we can get flagged by LinkedIn and a bunch of other different complications. That's what we don't want. So instead of that, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a loop over items node here, and we're going to split it in batches. All right, because this way what we'll be able to do is send maybe 20 or 10 or however many we want to send. That is a reasonable number. 20 is a good limit, because I think at least at the time of this recording, LinkedIn limits you to 100 connection requests per week. All right, so you don't want to set off any flag any filters or anything like that to get your LinkedIn account banned. Unless you have multiple LinkedIn accounts, you can set up automations for that too. But in this video, we're going to go over how to make sure you can send from one account without setting off any flags or anything. So the loop over items node, you can set to however many you want. We'll just set this to 10, but 20 is the maximum. And we'll just add that there. All right, so let me delete this first, delete this, and delete this. Move this out the way. All right, so we're going to connect this here. And if we want to pin these nodes here. All right, pin all of these. We're also going to go ahead and save this so we don't have our laptop erase our workflow anymore. And now what we'll do is we'll run this node here just to make sure it's working. All right, so this node is executed successfully, and you can see only 10 items have been sent to the messaging model node. We still haven't set this up yet, but you can at least see now that the limit or the loop is working correctly. All right, now the next, what we want to do with this node here is we want to be able to generate a connection message. All right, now what we're going to do is open this up here. And for this one, we can keep this as text. We can keep this as messaging model, and we can use for this, we can use 4.1 mini for this because, it's only a quick note that we're going to add into the LinkedIn request. So the first prompt that we want to add 99% of the time is always going to be a system prompt, because this tells the AI what it is, what its identity is. And we also want to add a user prompt after that, which tells it what its task is related to that identity. All right, so for this one here, so for the system prompt, we'll say you are a helpful. So always put the system prompt first, and then for the user prompt. And for the user prompt, we're going to use a template for the user prompt. All right, so I'm going to provide all of these for you. All you need to do is join the community. You'll be able to access and download all of these prompts for yourself, as well as this entire workflow. But give me a second, and I'm going to pull that and implement that into this user prompt here. All right, so something that you can see here, right? So I'm going to expand it so you can take a closer look at it. If you notice, all I really did here was take what we typed into ChatGPT earlier, and I copy and pasted this in here. I added a little bit extra text here at the bottom, but this basically should be pretty solid. And again, you'll be able to download this for free. Just join the community, and this will be there for you in the template section. All right, now we're going to add another prompt here for another user prompt. So this one, actually, we're going to change to an assistant. And we're actually going to go up here, and do we have anything in here? No. Okay, tell you what we'll do instead. We'll go to ChatGPT again, and we'll take one of these icebreakers in JSON format. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy that, and we're going to paste that in here as an example. All right, so that way it knows, or it has an idea of what it should be aiming for. All right, and then the last step here is we want to give it the data that we want it to use to make the actual message that we're going to be sending. So once again, you don't need all of this information, but the more information the system has, then the more information it has to work from in order to craft the message. All right, so this should be enough information, more than enough. Now, another thing we want to do is make sure that output content is JSON is turned off. All right, and now what we want to do is make sure the output content is JSON is turned on. All right, and we can go ahead and test this. Let's see what we get. All right, we see that the node was executed successfully. 10 items were created. We can see the messages here. They aren't perfect, right, but they are decent, right? Like this one here, you can see it says, "Hey, impressed by how you're steering community growth at B3 Alliance. I'm also emerging tech and strategy. Let's connect." All right, "Hey, Andrew, impressed by how Behavior Design Collective applies behavioral sciences to real-world challenges. Also keen on using psychology to shape user experiences. Let's connect." Right, so these are decent. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but I'm okay with this. I'm happy with this. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to now add these icebreakers to our column in the Google Sheet. Okay, so now we're going to add the icebreakers to the icebreaker column on our Google Sheet. All right, so we're just going to copy this or duplicate it, drag that there, unpin this. All right, and all of this is already updated here, right? But now we're going to go to our icebreaker column, and we're going to drag our icebreaker from here, right here. Just that easy. All right, now we are going to execute this step. All right, and let's check out our sheet here, and we should be able to see we sort by our icebreaker. Okay, so you can see here, again, we only had 10 that we ran through for the loop, so it's only going to show 10. But you can see here that all 10 that were created, this one was already here from before, right? But all 10 that were created are here. All right, so we'll also go ahead and wrap these around. All right, there we go. All right, so that's how that's done there. Now what we'll do is we'll go back here and we'll drag this to the loop over items right here, so that way every time it finishes its loop it will start over again. All right, so it'll get 10, create 10 messages, go back and create another 10, so on and so forth. So it'll loop all the way through until all of these are completed. All right, so that's how that works there. All right, now the last thing we want to do here, the final step, is to set up the Phantom Buster node. All right, so we're going to go here, go to Phantom Buster. Now, something to point out here, this is a very easy message that you can copy and paste, right? Because if you really wanted to, all you needed to do, like, let's say, for example, you didn't want to pay for Phantom Buster or anything like that, you can easily just copy that. All right, so now that we see that we have 10 items created here, the next thing we want to do is we actually want to duplicate this Google Sheets node here, and we want to drag in the new values. All right, so basically we'll go to loop over items, drag in our LinkedIn URL here, full name, and we'll do this all the way down the same way we did before, but this time we're pulling from loop over items. Another thing to point out, you might be noticing this already, you might be thinking, well, couldn't we have just waited till the end to create this Google Sheet? Yes, we could have, but me personally, I like to make sure that all of the data is collected and tested, especially on the first go through, and we don't lose anything. So that's why we set up the Google Sheet earlier, so that way we can test the functionality of the Amplify actor and all of those things. All right, but if you want to just wait until the end so that you only have to set up the Google Sheet one time, then that's perfectly fine as well. That should also work if you do it correctly. All right, so we're just going to go through all of these here. All right, and for this very last one, for Icebreaker, we're going to go back up here, and we're going to go to the Messenger Model node, OpenAI node, and we're going to drag the Icebreaker from here, right here. All right, now we're going to execute this step. All right, so we're going to set this. So the only difference we're going to make here is, all right, so for the LinkedIn URL, since we're using this column to match, we're going to use the node from the append or update row and sheet instead of the loop over items for this one. All right, so let's drag and drop this one here. Execute this step so we can test it, see what's going on. All right, so the next thing we're going to do now is create the Phantom Buster node. So we'll add that here, typing in Phantom Buster. We want to add an agent to the launch queue. So we'll click that one here. Make sure your Phantom Buster account is connected. The way that you make sure that it's connected is you go to Phantom Buster, click API keys. You're going to add a new API key and it'll connect your account for you. I've already connected my account. All right, but just understand that when you click add a new API key, it's going to give you an API key and it's going to show it to you once. So after it shows it to you once, make sure you copy it and paste it somewhere or save it if you need it for future reference, because it only shows it once before it hides it. You can create as many API keys as you want, but just make sure that you know that just in case so you don't lose it. All right, so in the way that you connect it is the same way you connect every other account. So you'll just click here, copy and paste it here, and connect it that way. So that's how you'll make sure that that's connected there. After that's connected, the next thing you're going to need to do is copy and paste your agent ID into n8n. All right, so the way to find the agent ID, just go to your the phantom that you're trying to use. Yeah, so what you're going to do is you're going to take this ID right here. All right, so after the word phantoms in the URL, that number right here is what you're going to copy, and then you're just going to paste that right here. All right, mine is already connected, so I don't need to paste it, but that's all you're going to do right there. All right, and after you paste it, it's going to show up like this. So I can just, so then you'll be able to just click the agent ID right there. All right, and that's how you set up the agent there. Now the next thing we want to do is connect the JSON parameters. So the way to find that, go to your agent, go to the setup, and it's going to look like this at first, right? So where you set it up at, it's going to look like this. Then what we want to do is click the three dots, switch to JSON, and all we're going to do is just copy and paste this entire JSON code right here. And we're going to turn on JSON parameters. We're going to add a field for arguments JSON. We're just going to paste that here. So that's basically what we're going to do there. Okay, and I believe this is all we need for this one, but we'll figure that out here in a second. Okay, so we'll add that here. The next thing we're going to need to add is something that will allow us to update our spreadsheet, right? Because after we send out an invitation request, we want to be able to track that so that we know who we've already messaged and who we still need to message, right? And we want to be able to track that automatically. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we add a column here called invitation sent. All right, and basically in this column we'll have this update to something like invited or received or something like that, that'll let us know that that specific lead has already gotten an invitation. We also want to make sure that this says LinkedIn URL exactly, all right, because we want this to match whatever is in our workflow. So the next thing we'll add is an output node. All right, so we want to get the output of an agent. We'll select the same agent here. We'll add a field for the previous container ID. All right, now what we're probably going to need is this one here, right? We haven't ran it yet, but we're going to test it. But basically every run, Phantom Buster doesn't tell you whether or not the actual run was successful. It tells you if the node was executed successfully, but it doesn't tell you the actual result of the run. It just gives you a container ID, and that way you'll be allowed to check it, which is, still pretty effective. But this will allow us to basically cross-reference and say, okay, because there's a container ID that was accurate and successful, that means that by default, the run was successful, which tells the workflow to go ahead and update the invitation sent column on the spreadsheet. All right, so we're going to drag and drop that here, and that's all we got to do there. All right, so what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead. I'm actually going to unpin all of these. All right, because we want to make sure we still have enough connections left. And we're going to unpin those, and we're going to actually run this from here. And let's just see what we get. It might end up creating another 10. It's going to create another 10 icebreakers, but that's okay. All right, because really what we want to do is just make sure we have enough test data so that, if we need to add anything else in here, we can do that without, it stalling on us or having any issue. All right, so we're just going to run it right here for now. Let's see what we get. Okay, so it says the service is receiving too many requests. Let me try something here and see if this helps, because what we might want to do here is set up a limit node anyway. So that way we're not running all 10 at the same time. We're only running one. So let me see if this fixes the issue here. Okay, so now the node was executed successfully. All right, so basically what it is because we set this to 1, right? You see right here in the JSON file, it says number of ads per launch is 1. That means that it's set up like that in Phantom Buster. So by us having 10 items right here, that was overloading what the Phantom was programmed to do, right? Another thing is a limit node is actually a good idea, which is usually what we would set up anyway, just because we want to test with ideally just one lead at a time instead of testing with 10, right? I mean, it's only 10, right? But at the end of the day, we're still testing, so a limit node sets it to where it's limited to just one instead of having all 10 run through. All right, so that's how that's set up there. Now, if we click on this agent here, we should now have some output data, right? So if you look over here on the get output, originally we didn't have this data that we can run off of, right? But now that we have this JSON ID is going to register right here, right? So you can see that this number is the same as this number now, and that's really what we want. We want that field there because that field is going to automatically update whenever an invitation is sent out, because that will let this workflow know that the run was successful, not just the node execution. All right, so that's what we have there. Now what we want to do is go ahead and set up a set node here. All right, we'll keep this as manual mapping. We're going to add a couple fields here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a field called LinkedIn URL, and we're going to add a field here. I think it should be JSON.LinkedIn URL underscore from underscore input. I believe this is what it's going to be called, but either way, we're going to run the previous agent or the previous node to see what that'll be, but I'm pretty sure this is what it'll read as. So we'll test that in a second. We'll also name this invitation status, and then we'll name this one invited. So basically what this will do is let us know on our spreadsheet in this column, right, whether or not the invitation was sent or not. All right, as a matter of fact, we're just going to copy this and we're going to change this to exactly what it says on the sheet. All right, so that's what we'll call that. All right, invitation sent, invited. It's always ideal to have this match exactly what it says on your spreadsheet. Okay, now we're going to go ahead, let me go ahead and pin these. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this now, and let's see what we get. So we're going to run this. Okay, so this node was executed successfully. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so you can see this is based on the previous container ID, and now with this one here, we'll go ahead and execute this one as well, and let's see what we get with this. Okay, so all of these nodes were executed successfully. All right, so it says, okay, so now we can see that this node was run successfully, and if we go to our spreadsheet, it's updated right here. So this connection was invited. You can see it right here. Andrew Zimmerman received an invitation. All right, now last but certainly not least, something that is always a good idea to do is we want to set this up so that basically it will loop automatically. So the way to do that, we can just drag this here. All right, we'll connect this to loop over items. All right, now another thing that is a good idea to add in here is a wait node, right? Because since we're using LinkedIn, LinkedIn has limitations on how many invites you can send per week or per day, right? So rather than sending all, I think is, we have 1,090 items here, over 1,000 items here. Obviously, we don't want to send all of those at the same time. So we could add something in here called a wait node, to where basically it will wait 1 day before sending out the next batch of invitations. So LinkedIn has a limit to where I think you can send, at least as of today, you can send a maximum of 100 invitations per week, or somewhere in that range, right? 100 to like maybe 150, somewhere in there, but I think it's 100. After you pass that limit, it makes it difficult, or it can ban your account, right? So rather than allowing that to happen, it's a good idea to set this up to where you only send maybe 20 items at a time, right? You can set your limit node, for example. We can set this to 20, right? And if that's set to 20, then, that'll run through, 20 times, but it'll only do it once per day, right? So it'll go through 20 times a day, and then it'll wait for another day before it sends the next 20, right? So basically, if you have that set up, you'll be able to run it, and it'll run automatically however you want to do it with no issue. And let me think, is that everything that we need to do here? So loop over items, create the icebreaker. Yeah, that should be it. All right, so yeah, ladies and gents, that's it for this video. I hope this was helpful. It definitely helped me out, right? This is my first time going through this build as well, and I plan to use this workflow myself. I will have this workflow available in the community, so if you want to just download this and use it for yourself, then just join the community and it'll be there for you. All right, so if this video was helpful, like, comment, subscribe, ask questions. It definitely helps us out, and I'll see you on the next video.